You can spend 20 years next to someone, share a bed, a mortgage, 1,000 Sunday mornings, and still wake up next to a stranger.
And here's the part nobody wants to hear. Sometimes the stranger in that story isn't just them. It's the person you slowly stopped being.
So how do you disappear inside your own life without ever noticing? And how do you find your way back? Welcome to the Life Architect Podcast.
Let's get into it.
Think about navigating a city you've lived in for like 20 years. You know the route so well that you just stop looking at the street signs.
Right. You operate entirely on memory.
Exactly. You're walking blindfolded by familiarity, guided by this mental map you drew decades ago. And today we are tackling the really profound tension between comfortable trust and self-erasure in long-term relationships.
Which is a dynamic that Belle Burden captures brilliantly in her memoir, Strangers.
She really does. We're examining the invisible ways individuals can slowly disappear within their own lives. So the central question before us is this: does long-term intimacy inherently require us to rely on static mental maps of our partners? Or does this chronic comfort actually lead to a slow-motion self-erasure disguised as love?
It's a heavy question.
It is. My position is that true intimacy requires unsentimental presence, and that what we often, comfortably call trust is in reality a dangerous abdication of the self.
And my position is that the comfort of trusting a partner, of building a reliable map, and maintaining a cooperative, agreeable environment is a fundamental, functional mechanic of love. It's not necessarily a failure of it.
Well, to understand this, I think we have to look closely at the cognitive architecture of a long-term relationship. Over time, marriages and long partnerships inevitably evolve into institutions.
Yeah, they do.
Like any institution, they develop procedures, divisions of labor, a kind of bureaucratic momentum. And the danger here is that both individuals become so accustomed to the daily hum of this machinery that they stop looking at each other.
And they stop looking at themselves.
Precisely. We start substituting the living, breathing, evolving human being across the kitchen island for an avatar. Basically, a mental map we drew 5, 10, or even 20 years ago.
But let's look at the actual mechanism of why we do that. We don't build these mental maps out of laziness, right? We build them out of sheer cognitive and emotional necessity.
How so?
Well, you cannot wake up every single morning and process a partner of 2 decades as novel stimuli. If you had to consciously navigate every intersection of their personality or, interrogate every motive every single day, you would never actually get anywhere.
Sure, the brain seeks efficiency.
Exactly. The brain creates maps for efficiency. Love, by its very nature, requires building a reliable model of someone's character and then leaning on that model so you can actually build a life, raise children, pursue your own goals.
I agree that the brain seeks efficiency, but applying that efficiency to human intimacy is a fatal miscalculation. Maps do not age alongside the territory.
That's a strong statement.
It is, but think about it. When you rely entirely on that decades-old map, your perception just freezes. And what happens when the city changes while you aren't looking?
You get lost.
Worse than lost. What happens when a new building goes up or a street is suddenly made one way and you walk straight into traffic simply because your map didn't show it? This is exactly why an abrupt ending, a divorce, a sudden betrayal always seems to, quote, come out of nowhere.
Right. It didn't come out of nowhere. The city was changing the whole time. Nobody was looking.
That assumes the worst-case scenario, though. It frames the reliance on a partner as an inherent vulnerability to betrayal.
I think it is an inherent vulnerability, but in the source material, Burden describes handing over the logistical and financial life entirely to her partner. And the vital nuance there is that it actually felt romantic to her. It felt like safe harbor.
It mimics the feeling of a safe harbor, yes.
But when a partner says, I'm going to take care of you, I have this handled, accepting that offer feels like the ultimate expression of mutual trust. It is the reward of long-term commitment.
We are purchasing that illusion of safety with our own agency, though. It is abdication wearing the mask of romance. Let's ground this in a real-world scenario that happens in millions of households.
Okay, let's hear it.
The bank account. Consider the individual who hasn't looked at their family's tax returns or investment accounts or overall financial landscape in years. Why? because they completely trust their partner to handle the spreadsheets.
Which is incredibly common.
Very common. But they delegate not just the task of paying bills, but the entire awareness of their financial reality. They hand over the reins of their daily existence, label that delegation, trust, and stop looking.
Yeah.
When you do that, you aren't just blinding yourself to your partner's actions. You are blinding yourself to your own footing in the world.
The immediate, entirely human objection to this, though, is that auditing a partner's work introduces friction where none needs to exist.
It doesn't have to be an audit.
But it feels like one. In any functional partnership, you divide labor based on aptitude, right? And emotional endurance. If one person is naturally adept at managing financial assets and the other finds it paralyzing, why wouldn't they outsource that stress?
Because of the cost of the outsourcing.
But think of how it lands. If I suddenly sit down at the table, demand the Vanguard passwords, and start reviewing our monthly expenditures after 10 years of hands-off trust, my partner is going to think I'm preparing for a divorce. It feels like an accusation. Checking the finances feels like a sign of suspicion, and suspicion poisons a healthy dynamic.
That is exactly the cultural myth we need to dismantle right there. We have to make a razor-sharp distinction between watching someone and being present.
Okay, how are you distinguishing those?
Suspicion and presence are structurally entirely different behaviors. Suspicion is outward-looking. It is hypervigilant. It's looking at them to catch them in a lie or find a discrepancy.
Right.
Presence, however, is inward-looking. It looks at you. Reviewing your own financial reality is not about checking on a partner. It is about checking back into your own life.
So the motivation isn't about verifying their trustworthiness at all. It's about maintaining your own continuous existence in the reality of the life you're co-creating.
Precisely. Whether your partner is a saint or a scoundrel is entirely irrelevant to the fact that your name is on the tax return.
That is a very fair point.
Your future, your security, your legal liability, they are tied to those assets. To delegate the task is a functional division of labor, but to delegate the awareness is self-erasure.
Okay, so what is the alternative that doesn't blow up the marriage?
To maintain that visibility, the concrete action required is simple but profound. Institute a monthly 30-minute money conversation.
Just 30 minutes?
Just 30 minutes. It is not an interrogation. It is not an audit. It's merely a scheduled practice of staying visible in your own life. You sit down, you look at where the assets are, what the obligations are, and you confirm a shared reality. You refuse to let your own life become a black box.
I can see how differentiating presence from suspicion reframes that action entirely. It really lowers the temperature.
Exactly.
But financial abdication doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? It's usually a symptom of a much wider, more insidious behavioral adaptation.
Yes, it spreads to other areas.
Right. A partner doesn't just hand over the tax returns. They hand over their preferences, their minor daily dissents, and eventually their boundaries. This brings us to what the material highlights as the good one, identity.
Yes, the nickname Burden adopted in the book. Belle the Good. Discreet, compliant, agreeable.
And we need to look at exactly why people adopt this identity. Because it isn't born of weakness. It's often a highly calibrated survival mechanism, and a deeply ingrained strategy for love.
It's a strategy, definitely.
Let's look at a scenario almost everyone recognizes. The dinner table opinion that gets swallowed to avoid ruining the mood. Let's say your partner wants to invite a particularly chaotic relative to stay for a long weekend.
Oh, everyone knows this feeling.
You are already exhausted from a long work week. You don't want to do it. But you look across the table, you weigh the cost of a Tuesday night argument against the value of household harmony, and you offer a casual, sure, it's fine.
But it's not fine.
Right. But being agreeable in that moment isn't self-erasure. It's tactical genius. When you're managing dual careers, raising children, and dealing with the absolute chaos of modern life, that chronic agreeableness is what keeps the marriage working.
I have to strongly disagree there. That chronic agreeableness only looks like love.
How so?
It mimics the shape of a healthy compromise, but structurally, the mechanism is entirely different. Compromise is two whole, visible people negotiating a shared outcome.
Okay.
The good one, identity, is a silent unilateral negotiation where only one person is paying the the price. Every time you swallow that dinner table opinion, every time you say it's fine when your nervous system is screaming that it isn't, you're making a small payment, and you are paying with a piece of yourself.
But what is the alternative, realistically? If we don't adopt some level of compliance, relationships devolve into constant, exhausting power struggles.
It doesn't have to be a power struggle.
But if every minor disagreement requires a fierce defense of boundaries, the house becomes a battleground. The intention behind being the good one is to nurture the relationship, to be a low-friction, safe harbor for the person you love.
The intention does not change the psychological mechanism of what is actually happening to you, though.
Which is what?
Over time, when you repeatedly swallow your preferences, your brain registers that your voice does not matter. Eventually, your nervous system stops even generating the preference because the pathway is pruned.
Wow.
You literally forget what you want. So I have to ask the incisive question here. Did that agreeableness actually keep the marriage working, or did it merely keep it quiet?
Oh man, that is a very sharp distinction. Functioning relationship versus a silent one.
Exactly. When you prioritize being the good one, you are trading visibility for approval. And the cruelest irony of this strategy is that the better you get at being low friction, the more invisible you become.
Invisible to your partner?
Not just to yourself, but to the very partner whose love you are trying to secure. You fade entirely into the background of your own life. And when a crisis hits, there is no solid person left to navigate it.
I will push back on how difficult this is to recognize in the moment, though, because the societal reward loop heavily favors the good one.
Oh, society loves the good one.
Absolutely. You're praised by your partner, by your in-laws, by your friend group for being so low maintenance. You're celebrated for being a, quote, supportive partner, for never being difficult.
Right. It's completely reinforced.
It takes a tremendous amount of conscious, painful effort to wake up and realize that the reward of a quiet evening is costing you your fundamental identity. The friction you're avoiding with your partner is simply being redirected inward, turning into a quiet, calcifying resentment.
Which is exactly why it cannot be fixed with a sudden, grand declaration of independence.
Right.
If the habit of chronic compliance is built through tiny, daily abdications, it must be broken through tiny, daily reclamations. It's a muscle that is completely atrophied.
So the action to counteract this self-erasure would be to reclaim just one outsourced decision this week.
Just one.
Something small that you would normally reflexively leave to your partner to keep the peace. It could be deciding where to go for dinner and holding firm on your choice even if they suggest an alternative.
Perfect example.
Or it could be choosing how a specific weekend hour is spent, or handling a logistical household issue you usually avoid. The stakes of the actual decision are irrelevant, right?
Completely irrelevant.
The practice of breaking the reflex of compliance is the entire point. You are intentionally introducing a microscopic amount of friction into the ecosystem to prove to yourself that the relationship and your own identity can survive it.
And surviving that friction brings us to the ultimate reality of human relationships.
Which is?
We erase ourselves. We become the good one, and we rely on the static mental map because we are desperately seeking certainty. We want a guarantee.
Yeah, everybody wants that safe harbor.
We believe that if we are just good enough, agreeable enough, compliant enough, the safe harbor will be permanent. But the unsentimental truth is that you can never fully know another person.
That's terrifying.
Are human. They're capable of profound change. They can be playing a role, wearing the mantle of the loyal partner. And one day they might simply decide they are done playing that role and walk away.
This is what we often call the switch flipping phenomenon. One day the partner is there, and the next day they're entirely unrecognizable.
Yes, but the switch didn't flip overnight. The map just became entirely obsolete. And because absolute certainty was never on the table to begin with, erasing yourself to please them is a fatal miscalculation.
Because you have nothing left.
Exactly. If everything collapses, if the map is suddenly proven false, survival and resilience do not come from having anticipated the collapse. You cannot predict every earthquake.
True.
Resilience comes from having refused to abandon yourself along the way. When the dust settles, there must still be a you to come back to.
I need to really press on the existential dread of that reality, though.
Go ahead.
If we accept this premise, if we accept that absolute absolute certainty is never available, that I can never truly 100% know the person sleeping next to me, and that they are fundamentally unknowable and capable of leaving, why open up at all?
It's a fair question.
If I can't build a permanent safe harbor, aren't I just living in a state of hypervigilance? What is the point of marriage or deep commitment if the foundation is inherently shifting? It makes intimacy sound like a foolish, exhausting gamble.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. That dread comes from assuming the goal of intimacy is a lifetime guarantee of stasis.
Which it isn't?
No, I hold the unsentimental line here. Presence was always the deal. Certainty never was. We don't open up to another person because we have a legally binding emotional guarantee they'll never change or leave.
Right.
We open up because the act of sharing a life in the present moment is inherently valuable. Intimacy is found in the daily practice of authenticity. It is two fully realized, visible individuals choosing each other today. The illusion of a guarantee actually kills intimacy because it allows you to fall asleep at the wheel.
So the vulnerability isn't in hoping they never leave. The vulnerability is in being entirely yourself, knowing the ground could shift, but trusting that your own 2 feet are solid.
Yes.
You aren't trusting them never to change. You're trusting yourself to handle it if they do.
To have seen it coming. It's the ability to rebuild trust in oneself, to reclaim one's voice.
Yeah.
The only person you can absolutely refuse to abandon is yourself. And the concrete action to build this specific resilience is a daily truth practice. Commit to saying one true thing per day instead of the comfortable, agreeable thing.
That sounds hard.
It is hard. When your instinct screams at you to say, it's fine about the chaotic relative visiting, pause and state your actual preference. Build the evidence day by day that your voice exists, that it has weight, and that you are an active participant in your own life.
We've covered some incredibly heavy yet vital terrain today. It really forces a complete reevaluation of how we operate in our closest bonds, moving away from the fantasy of permanent safety and toward the reality of continuous engagement.
Let's summarize where we've landed. My position remains that we must shed the illusion of certainty and replace it with active presence. We must rigorously distinguish true trust from the abdication of our agency.
Right.
Handing over your awareness in the name of love is a trap. The only way to avoid disappearing in your own life is to refuse the comfort of the static mental map and commit to the friction of being a fully visible, fully participating partner.
And while I maintain that the desire to build a comfortable mental map and to play the role of the agreeable peacemaker is a deeply human, entirely understandable way to seek safe harbor in a chaotic world, the discussion today illuminates the hidden, often devastating costs of that strategy.
It really does.
We must be incredibly careful not to pay for the peace of our households with pieces of ourselves. The mechanics of relationships are remarkably complex, and balancing cooperation with fierce individuality is perhaps the hardest daily work we do.
It is profound complexity, and understanding these concepts not as abstract psychological theories, but as lived daily experiences at the dinner table, over the tax returns, reveals the truly invisible mechanics of our relationships.
Absolutely.
There is so much more to uncover in Burden's material regarding how we navigate vulnerability and how we maintain our footing when the landscape shifts. But as we end today, I'm brought back to that metaphor of walking through the city.
Yeah, the blindfold.
We think we know the streets, so we close our eyes. But the city is alive. It changes. New buildings go up, old ones are torn down, and walking around with a map from a decade ago won't protect you when you finally hit a wall. You have to open your eyes.
I stopped looking at my own life, and starting today, I look again.